Good morning. How's everyone doing? Good, good. I'm thrilled to be with you today. I'm particularly thrilled to be here with Susie Nelson, a new leader at MIT, been here just a year. I can remember actually being in a session interviewing Susie and thought, that's who we need. And then when she joined, thinking, let's see how she does this first year. And then being really thrilled to really experience having Susie come in as a newcomer and really now be a leader, and having learned faster than I could have imagined learning about MIT culture. So this part of the hour is for us to include you first in a conversation, and then we'll have some question and answer period. And so I'm going to start off with a few questions to really highlight some of the priorities of the Division of Student Life, Susie's vision, where we are in the history of student life here at MIT, and what portends for the next year, 5 years, 10 years. So as a newcomer, I mean, I've been here 18 years. Class of '85, I went away for 10 years and built a bunch of buildings, came back as a faculty member. And so I'm very curious to know, as a relative newcomer, what are your thoughts about MIT culture, where we are in our history, and where we're going?
Well, first, John, you are awesome to work with too. And everything that we think of we need done, we think of John first, so including this talk. So thank you for doing this. I've thought a lot about this because, of course, it's the first question I'm asked. You know, how are we different? How are we the same? What's special about us? And I've seen this video a couple of times now, and I think the closing tagline, "It's the coolest place," is the one that resonates with me because it is the coolest place. I love the students at every campus. They're my favorite part of my job. It's why I get up in the morning and come to work. But the students here are particularly special. I know you know that, and I know you at one time were students. I think what makes this place different, and every school says this, every school says the out-of-class experience is an opportunity to involve students, to give them practical experience, leadership opportunities. But what MIT does that's a little different, and how it coincides with what happens in the classroom, is they really believe it. They really believe that you learn by doing, and that we should really knock the barriers out of the way so that students can actually do for themselves. And that happens in the houses in particular, I think, but it happens really across campus. The trick is, how do you find the balance to give enough freedom, but make sure there's a safety net and there's some boundaries around that freedom. So I think that's what MIT does particularly well. I will say my very first week when I went to all the REX events. These are residential exploration events. And I went over to East Campus and they were building a fort. That wasn't the year they built the roller coaster, that was this year. That was a new one for me. I have to tell you, that was, power saws at 9 o'clock at night, new experience in a residence hall. But I think that's a good example of how seriously the students take safety and that type of project and ownership of their living community.
Great, okay. Help me out a little bit here, because I have to admit, you probably all know more about student life and how it runs through the chancellor's office than I did when I agreed to be head of house. Because as a student in EC, with my tight black skinny pants and going to class, taking my GIRs, I didn't really know what the chancellor did. I didn't even know, God forbid, my head of house, or back then housemaster. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about being on the chancellor's senior team. What does that involve? How does it work? How do you actually affect change and moving forward in student life?
I came to MIT because of Cindy. We had a 2-hour lunch. We both ordered the same thing, tomato soup and grilled cheese. That's what I remember. What I remember about Cindy and why I wanted to work with her, because I had a perfectly good job. I was happy. I was at Colgate. I was dean of the college. I was close to where I grew up. But what I remember about her is she's a very straightforward, honest person. She spent those 2 hours telling me the things that you don't usually learn in an interview, the things that were wrong. But then I kind of learned that that's an MIT quality, where people aren't afraid to talk about problems and the aspects of the environment that need to change. So I think for Cindy, what drew me to her as a leader is certainly her compassion, her honesty, her ethical backbone, and her competence. And it's gotten better because Ian Waits has joined the team, and he was the dean of the School of Engineering, and so he's bringing a lot of really good experience to how that might improve the first-year experience. He's looking at the graduate student experience. He's looking at professional development and advising, and just academic climate in general, and how students can thrive depending upon their department. So there's a lot of opportunities for overlap. I will speak a little bit to our goals. We have an ambitious set of goals, and they're online. And I'm not going to mention all of them because we could spend the rest of the day talking about them. But when I got here, I wanted to reframe what the Division for Student Life was about. I wanted students to know that we're here for them. That's our primary responsibility. And we have a big staff in student life, and it's a very diverse staff. We have over 400 people. We have custodians, dining hall workers, security staff, deans who work, the deans for the Student Support Services Office, heads of house. We have all these people who are engaged working with students. And the core thing I think that can pull us together is that our job is to be student-centered in our approach and empathetic and looking at the person who's right in front of us and trying to understand what their needs are. Not in a way that we might, not customer servicey way, but more of a, what is it that you need to be healthy, balanced, and successful today, and how can I help you do that? I'm sorry if you can't hear me. We have 6 areas with this mission of We're Here for Students. We're looking at, and I'm going to talk about a couple of them, but not all 6. But we're looking at health and well-being. That's definitely a priority, and it fits very nicely into the Mind, Hand, Heart initiative. Physical spaces is huge, and it's, as Marty said, it's really dominating our attention, and needs to. We're looking at the graduate students, and we've pulled the graduate students out as a special category because I think they do have unique needs. Creating a welcoming campus community and diversity and inclusion, which is our fourth goal. And then active learning, which I've already mentioned. And then finally, just with that large staff, how do you engage people in such a way that they feel empowered and they get the mission as deeply as the other person? So I want to talk about a couple things that I think have worked particularly well in the last year. And this is because of the great team that we have. The first is the student development and well-being. When I came on board, Cindy wanted to combine those units that work with student support and well-being. And David Randall's leading that effort. Violence prevention and response is on that team, alcohol and other drugs, student disability services. So we basically pulled together those folks who were operating in different places of the Institute all together on one team, and that has had a dramatic effect. It's allowed us to really partner with the house teams, for example, which is a great resource. It's the Cadillac of residential life models in my mind, to kind of support those folks in the work that they do with students in the house. One initiative is a care team that we've formed. And the care team, it's 3 deans, and their job is to do the more intensive, high-touch work with those students who are in distress. So we have a dean on-call system, 24/7. We respond to students in crisis. But there are some crises that actually take a lot more hand-holding and high-touch approach. And this care team is the team that it gets handed off to, and they follow up. They had over 400 cases with graduates and undergraduates last year alone. And what we heard back from those 400 people who are in their most vulnerable state is how appreciative they were to MIT that they cared so much that they took the time to pay attention to them. So I think that's an important innovation. And then I want to talk about physical spaces, and then maybe we'll go on to another question. But
Sure.
this one's a pretty important one. When I got here, I heard about everything that's wrong, and there's a lot of deferred maintenance. So it's easy to get discouraged with deferred maintenance, but I have always been living in deferred maintenance because I'm married to an electrician, and we always bought fixer-uppers and had to fix them up. So our kids know how to fix things up. I know how to fix things up, even if I'm not very good at it. So I know you can spend a little bit of money, and that makes a really big impact. And so that short-term vision is important because the students who are here now, they want to have a good MIT experience. So you can do some very simple things with furniture and paint. It's not fixing what's behind the walls, I know that. But we'll get to the walls because it's in the queue. And we have to go with the queue because there's so much that we have to do. So we've done a number of short-term things. If you go over to Walker, which many of you are familiar with, that's a beautiful old building that needs a lot of work. But we're not going to do a ton of work to it, but we are going to put the Rainbow Lounge up on the 3rd floor in the Blue Room, which has a lovely view of the river. And we're going to paint and carpet. We're going to put a late-night cafe in Pritchett Cafe area. And we're going to build like a small private office where we can do office hours for violence prevention and response and mental health services and student support services. The late night cafe will open in October. Marty's like so awesome because he just has said, sure, you can have money for that. Sure, you can have money for this. So thank you, Marty. He supported all of these initiatives. And I think the late night cafe is especially important because our students have told us that about a third of our students, graduate students in particular, are satisfied with the late night eating options because they're non-existent. So they shouldn't be satisfied with them. The other thing we're doing for graduate students, they've told us that they don't feel at home in the student center. So we're in the coffee house lounge. We're turning that into a graduate student lounge primarily, but it will be open to others. And then finally, we're creating an intercultural center, which is in DuPont. That's the building right next to the student center. And that will be for LBGT and multicultural programs. We have over 100 groups that are focused in these areas. And that should open, actually it may be open now. It's been renovated. They're waiting on some furniture. For the long view, Newhouse. We spent all last year with students designing the renovation of Newhouse. That will be fully renovated and opened in 2018. Those students have been, some of them, 188 of them have been relocated across campus, and then they'll move back in the fall of 2018. Our new dorm on Vassar Street, we have another group of students who really helped us think about the plans for that, in particular the kitchens and the dining and the lounges, the things that they care a lot about. Graduate students, you're aware of the Kendall Site 4 building that will add 250 beds to our stock. The Clay report of 2014 told us we need 500 beds for graduate students. That gets us halfway there. But Ian is undertaking an effort this fall to study this number again and to make sure we've got it right, the number of graduate beds we have to add. And then FSILGs. We house 98% of our students, undergrads, on campus. About 3,300 of them live in residence on campus, and 1,100 of them live in our FSILG, so they're critically important to our living learning experience. We did a pilot over the summer. We had 3 chapters that agreed to test 3 architectural firms and do a facilities assessment of their buildings and get some information about what they might do for their building long term. We'll do all of the fraternities and sororities and independent living groups over the course of next year. It's going to be a partnership between the chapters and MIT. And give this information back to the chapters and then help support them in thinking about their long-term planning for their building. And this is near and dear to my heart. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Theta. I was a corporation president for 10 years for my chapter. And what you really need when you're in that job is help. You need not only resources, but you need direction. And you can't get direction on your facility without that type of deep assessment. And then finally, Steve DeFalco and Steve Baker, I know Steve Baker is here someplace, they've been working on this West Campus Village idea, and we all last year we had students kind of pull together what's their dream, their blue sky vision of a village on West Campus. And this year what we're going to look at is, well, how do we put some meat on the bones? How do we pay for that? What does it really look like? What's the program document for that? One last thing, Pierce Boathouse. I just emailed Julie Serrero this morning. There is a plan for the Pierce Boathouse. We have two options. One is a $10 million option, which doesn't expand the footprint, and the other is an $18 million option. We've got $2 million in hand, and we have to decide probably by January or February in what direction will we go, but the Pierce Boathouse is also on the list. So I'll stop there with goals, but
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I learned a number of things. I did take note. I'm just going to have to go ask Marty for money pretty soon. Actually, the honest truth is I've asked Marty for money already. So I'm going to combine a couple of the questions into one last question.
Oh, is that what's happening?
So as Susie readjusts, so the last question I really wanted to, so there's, my own experience, and it is by definition nostalgic about living on campus, is that and then now as head of house in a more sort of operational way, I understand that one of the things about this campus and student life is the living groups are incredibly diverse. And there's an incredible value in that. At the same time, we're one campus, right? And I also feel like, we're going to host the class of '68 for a couple of events next in June 20th. Anybody here from the class? There you go. And it's the class of '68. It's not the class of East Campus '68, right? It's not the class of Baker East '68. So I guess my question is, how do you promote and move forward, because things change, the unique culture without compromising it of student life and living on campus here at MIT?
I get asked this question about culture a lot, and I think the good thing, the positive thing, and all the research indicates that if a campus is successful in building small communities, if students really can engage at that more small network level and also feel like they're part of the big, then usually they'll persist, they'll be happy, they'll be successful academically. And I think what MIT does beautifully, and we should not lose, because I've been on campuses where this is not the case. In the dormitory system in particular, but FSILGs have always been pretty good at this. What we do here that's somewhat different is there's a really strong leadership component, student leadership component, and the faculty heads really share, it's a partnership with students. And in a lot of ways, they're kind of coaching. They're really a silent partner. And they're advising and coaching, but students are running with it. And that is really empowering to students. And that's the essence of culture that I think is the most important. One other thing that can go either way is self-selection. I mean, the good thing about self-selection is that you are around people who like things that you like, and so it feels comfortable. The downside of self-selection is you're around the same kind of people all the time, and that's not really, as we look at a goal for education, especially going forward, it's about diversity, because we have a very diverse world, and you have to learn how to get along with and understand and empathize with all kinds of people. And so how do you make sure that these small communities are not enclaves where you kind of stay walled off and safe? That's not a higher ed kind of word, I'm safe in my little cocoon. And how do you, it's a great place to let your hair down and go home and relax, but you have a community of communities. And you feel like you're part of every one of those, and that this is your home. And I think that's Raphael's vision, one campus, one community. And I certainly think it's Cindy's vision.
Wonderful. Great. So I'm going to add just a little bit to that. So as an architect, buildings come and go. Right? I mean, it's really for me, what I see between East Campus and Baker and Massey Simmons and all the rest of them is that the idea behind the culture is not only valuable to that community, but for example, we in Baker can learn from East Campus. And actually, this is literally the heads of house are talking about how the best parts of the community, these individual communities, we can learn from, and we can transfer, and we can up our game. So I'll leave it at that because I do want to leave time for questions. And so we do have 17 minutes. And we're very, very keen, interested to hear your questions, also hear your thoughts about anything that Susie said and other things about student life. I'm actually very thrilled that the focus this year is on student life, so it'd be really good to focus on that. I think we have one question here at the end. Are you enjoying the Boston weather? Yeah? Working out for you? First question.
All right, great. Thank you so much for providing this insight into student life at MIT. And it's so clear from your conversation that you're really deeply committed to the well-being of students on campus. And it's really refreshing to hear that. So just to give you a little bit of context, I and other people I'm sitting with here, actually, we're involved in engaging with young alumni. And as you can imagine, senior house, among other things, even dorm security and so on, has just been a persistent point of resistance to maybe engaging more with MIT, donating, being involved as a volunteer. Right. And so somehow the message you just communicated to all of us needs to go out to all of them. So given that you can't be in a billion places, what can we do to convey what you just said to the broader MIT 10 community?
I would hope you would say that the Division for Student Life wants to be here for students. That's the big takeaway message for me. And what that means is we're going to listen before we talk and act. It doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have any kind of boundaries with anything. And I think what's beautiful about MIT is the sense of freedom, the freedom to take risks. This is also unusual, the freedom to kind of cross boundaries. But with freedom comes, a sense of responsibility and a need to have reasonable limits. And Marty Culpepper, I don't know if you have ever heard from Marty. He is professor, he's our Maker Czar. He gives a great presentation about how he has enlisted students to run all these maker spaces on campus. He's amazing. And he's proved that the students actually have a higher safety rate than the staff. So with, I don't know how he's proved that, but that's what he says, and I believe him. But the way he's done that is by giving students responsibility and trusting them with that responsibility and trusting that they will carry forward on those things. That's what we're about. Doubling down on our goal to be student-centered and shared governance, what I would call shared governance with students. That's what the Division of Student Life is about. Do you want to call people?
So, I have a question about building space, and you might say I'm asking about failure, but I want to hear the story about the Metropolitan Storage Warehouse Dormitory and why the dormitory will be at West Garage instead.
Marty can give you the story about that failure because it happened before my time.
Failure, really? Well, okay, quickly. So in 2008, I became Associate Provost of MIT, responsible for space. The first 3 meetings I took as Associate Provost were people asking me, why can't we do X with the Met? The narrative on the Met had always been, its highest and best use is a storage facility. It has very small windows. It would be incredibly difficult to renovate it for anything else. And by the way, the Historic Commission won't let you touch it. So, so I sort of accepted that narrative because I was being told that by people who are quite knowledgeable. The breakthrough came when a faculty member in our architecture department said, not true. You can actually make this work. And as we started looking into what you could do with the Met, We were also facing the crisis of, having to have closed Bexley because the building was falling down, facing the challenges in some of the other dorms where, as we get at deferred maintenance, we realize they're really in tough shape. We started looking very hard at the Met as a residence hall. It was particularly compelling because it looked like we could open it quickly. After about a half a year of hard work and study, it turned out we could make it a residence hall, but not quickly. And we pivoted to the West Garage lot because then you could not only have a purpose-built building for residences, which would be more economical and more efficient and more sustainable, but would be delivered in the same time frame as the Met. And so what we're doing, we've pivoted now. We will do something. We haven't announced what we're going to do, but we will be doing something with the Met to activate that corner.
So not a failure after all. Redirection, yeah. I'm happy to, yeah.
All right, I think she's got
Okay, oh, sorry.
So life doesn't come in neat boxes. It is.
Yeah. Just,
You've got there's an academic side and a living side, and I'm wondering about the interaction between the two of them. Some of my best memories come from walking into professors' offices and sitting and talking about life and protests and the wars and all the rest, and inviting some of the professors to the country kitchen in McCormick Hall and making dinner, and they had us back. Is there any formal or informal interaction with faculty to encourage that type of interaction? You've got Europe now, but I don't know how much all of this crosses boundaries.
I have good answers, but John, why don't you?
yeah,
do you
so
mind?
I was going to jump in. Last year, Cindy and Susie, we invited them to Baker for dinner. And we can talk about an abstract bridge, but it really doesn't happen until people get in front of one another. And I think that was incredibly valuable for students. They loved it because, again, like me, like I was when I was an undergrad, they didn't really know what the chancellor did and what is student life. But it really made it much more apparent to them. But that's on the student life side. Many of the houses, I think all, if not all, have faculty dinners. And so we're very keen to bridge, west of Mass Ave, but then also East Campus with the main group. And that's a shorthand. But basically being able to have professors come in. So there are faculty fellows in the different houses. And the prospects for expanding and enhancing are really good, especially, for example, with the new dorm being very close to Mass Ave, having academic environments within it and linking to whatever the Metropolitan becomes. Likely there's going to be an interaction there that will be much richer and much less about, well, this is what you do after classes and this is what you do during classes. And we think that there's incredible potential, not only, the online learning, there's been a lot of discussion and talk about online learning, but there's an amazing prospect for learning in your space, in your living space. And today, if you go to Baker, so one of the things that my wife and I do a lot is keep track of the GIR exam schedule and the PSETs, and then the other major courses. So like 6034, the artificial intelligence class, I think hundreds of students are taking that. And we go around the dorm and with our food cart with healthy food and our dog Biko, and what you find is that there's probably more learning happening in Baker in the evening, that's 10 to 3, 4 in the morning, than there is in the classroom. And I say that with reservation, but these study groups working together. So I think it's already happening. So how can we enrich that? How can we enhance it? I think there's a lot of discussion right now about that. So I don't know.
I think, and I also just want to say the house model is a great model. I think it benefits faculty to see students outside of the classroom. It makes them better teachers, and it certainly benefits the students. We also have graduate resident tutors and graduate resident advisors who live in the FSILGs. And that graduate model, having them be the advisors on the hall, is a very different and special model that MIT has.
Hi, my name's Steve Robbins, and I was a vice president of Senior House through the 80s. come back for steer roast every year for 30 years. I have friends who were in the house back when it was a house. And I was one of the few people on the alumni side who tried really, really hard during the entire kerfluffle this year to keep things civil and I edited people's letters. I took out invective. I was on Facebook because I've had this role largely. I mean, back when I was a house, one of the House VPs, I spent a lot of time with the administration trying to kind of mediate discussions. The very fact that this has been the elephant in the room and you haven't mentioned it today is to me indicative of the same problem that characterized the entire process of shutting down the House. I wrote letters to you, to Chancellor Barnhart, and to 4 or 5 other people. Not only were the points in the letters not addressed, there was not even an acknowledgement of the receipt. I tried to get an appointment to see Chancellor Barnhart, and her assistant, who I talked to directly, didn't even call back to finish that. So my experience of this whole thing has been stonewalling, silence, and a complete lack of responsiveness to the issues that people brought up. Especially concerning because I'm a very emotional person, and boy, was I doing my best to subjugate my personal feelings and say, look, they're institutional. I worked at Babson in the president's office. I very much understand the institutional point of view, the student point of view, et cetera. And I did my best, and I really felt, I felt ignored, marginalized, and frankly, by the end of it, betrayed by MIT. I'm an educational counselor now, and so, and have been for the last 20 years. So my job is sitting down with students and telling them MIT has your best interests at heart. We listen. You started saying we're not afraid to discuss difficult things. We believe in transparency, and we listen before we talk. And those 3 statements could not characterize this whole process less. Including this today, because you did not address the hard problem. You've given us wonderful stories about campus, but so if I'm an educational counselor and I have students coming to me this fall and saying, help me understand MIT, how do I regain trust in the institution such that I can, with a clear and good conscience, say, yes, if you're a marginalized and a poor student who maybe has social anxiety, there is a place on campus where you will be comforted and supported, as opposed to you'll just have to go shut yourself in your room because you're not into football. I mean, I was harassed out of McGregor into senior house, which was how I got there. What can I do or say that will restore my faith in MIT, because I'm here, I clearly want to reconnect, but also convey that to students?
Steve, thank you for saying that. I'm glad to hear you want to meet and talk, and I'm happy to do that at any point. So please reach out, and I'm happy to talk more because there's limited amount of time and probably not. I can't even say enough. I hope I'm not sitting on my microphone, and that's not intentional. If I am. Yeah, it's in my dress, and I don't know what's happening with my microphone. So Senior House was the most emotional aspect of my job this year. And it was one facet, but it definitely was 90% of where my head was for most of the year. And I think I grew very close and still am very close to the students that I worked with, and I worked with many of them. And I'm a mother of 4. I've been a dean for 25 years. I know how hard everyone worked on this, including the senior team, Marty, Raphael, and Cindy. Hours, countless hours were spent agonizing over how do we help this community change. And that's what the whole turnaround was really about. And as I reflect on that, the decision that was made, I respect it, I understand it. No decision is perfect, and certainly this decision was not perfect. And what I would say is 2 things were a byproduct of this decision that are troubling to me and others, not just me. One is, you mentioned it. As I grew to know the students there and what they loved about Senior House, and I probably met with every student in Senior House many, many, many times because there weren't that many students living there. They said to me, this is a queer affirming space. It's not just about being welcoming as an LGBTQ person or a person who identifies in that way. It's more about being affirming, that when I walk through the doors of this space, I feel like people get me, and there are alums and others who are here for me and will mentor me. So one of the most difficult things with this decision was, how do we support that population of students? How do we, in the immediate, support those specific individuals? So what I will say to you is we have a whole team. I talked about this care team. It is that team and David Randall who these students are on their radar. He's checking in with them. Many of them have moved to East Campus, and others have moved to other locations on campus where they chose to move. We have gone above and beyond to, for example, if a student wanted to live in a dining dorm, but they didn't necessarily have the desire to have the dining plan, we've worked with them to kind of modify things so that we can accommodate their needs. Our first goal is to support those students. Our second goal is, John, you kind of said it, is to up our game. Because this is one community, one campus, and we shouldn't have just one place on campus that is queer affirming. So we have, it's part of why we have the Rainbow Lounge back. I'd originally traded it to get the Intercultural Center in DuPont. And then I asked for it back. And then I just found another space. But that's why we have the Rainbow Lounge in Walker, and it's why we have the Intercultural Center, and it's why we've invested in LBGT in a way that can broaden our programming across campus, hiring student interns, graduate student interns, doing community dinners in every one of the dormitories, working through Queer West and Allied, which is part of the FSILGs. We have a ton of student leaders who really want to make this campus, every dorm, feel the way that Senior House felt. That's our challenge. That's what we're going to work on. Already this summer, we've had training for graduate resident tutors, graduate resident advisors, all the area directors, and the heads of house are having, we're not calling it a training, an educational session to talk about LBGT and how we support students in our dorms. The other sad outcome for me, there are 400 murals in Senior House, which is a testament to the creative spirit of that place. And I've been working very closely with an alumnus who's amazing. She's also a graduate student here and an employee. She has worked to catalog all of the murals. They're all photographed, and we're doing another, I don't quite understand this, but it's basically like a virtual tour of the house. That's another thing that we're going to be doing. We worked really hard with this alum to figure out, okay, as we move new students into this space, instead of painting everything white, which would have been the easy thing to do, how do we preserve these special spaces? How do we account for the fact that new grad students are coming in who may not want to live next to a mural that might have something objectionable on it? So what we've done is we've, and not perfectly, but with her guidance and direction, refreshed, painted around the murals, which she told us has been happening every year, washed the walls, et cetera, covered those that were deemed objectionable by her. She said, if anything, a pot leaf in a corner, we're going to cover it. And we bought sheet metal, white sheet metal that's kind of temporarily placed over these murals. We have a committee that's being led by Leslie Kolodziewski, who's the faculty lead of the Committee on Student Life, and that is the Mural Review Committee. And that committee of faculty, staff, and students, including alums, it will include Senior House alums, Paula will be on it, what's the future of the murals? So last thing I'll say, because I could talk for 3 hours about Senior House, and I am happy to stay after, and maybe not 3 hours, but I'm happy to stay after and talk about it. Last thing I'll say, I've talked now, we have graduate students living there, and I've met with some of the graduate students who are Senior House alums. They were undergrads at MIT. One woman in particular met with me during my office hours and said, I really care about the creative nature of Senior House, and is there a way for us to keep that alive? and of course there is. So I've talked with Rob Miller, who's the head of house, and Kristen Covina, who's the associate head of house in East Campus, and Kristen is over in Senior House. And can we have a visiting scholar program? Can we make that connection with the Media Lab that was fairly strong before? These things don't need to go away. These things don't need to go away. But what I'll say at the end of the day, I love each and every one of the students I worked with, and young people make mistakes. And many of those students tried really hard to make things change. And I guess what I at the end of the day, when I look at the senior team's decision, it's not the 1970s anymore. And MIT, for all of its wonderful risk-taking environment, has to draw a bright line between safety and illegal behavior and creativity and risk-taking. And that's what I think is at the heart of this. And so for me, I think we have to take a break. And what I hope you would say to incoming students is we absolutely are going to support them. And I hope as alums, you would step away from this and have the perspective that it's an institute that has a long, 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 long history. And things ebb and flow. And we sometimes have to take action that is not popular for everyone and not happy for any of us to have to do. But we can right ourselves and reclaim the things that we thought were the most valuable and precious in this community. And that's what I hope we'll be able to do.
Thank you, Susie and John. I know there are other questions. Can we ask that you can stay till 10:45 when we have the break?
Yes.
And they can answer questions at the front of over here, okay?
So just one last, I can't resist, but one last word from me. On behalf of the faculty, I thank you for your leadership, and I hope you enjoy your visit to MIT.
Thank you. So thank you to both of you.